Hi, Steve here. I love the book of Enoch. This is what I use. A lot of people ask me, they say, what do you use? What do you read? What book of Enoch do you read? Because there's so many out there. Well, this is the book of Enoch, the second edition by Ronald K. Brown. Ronald K. Brown. I think he did a great job putting this together. But I want to say this about the book of Enoch. This book, the book of Enoch, is as much for today as at any other time. In fact, Enoch even mentions what generation he wrote this for. It would be the latter days, the end times. This book, in my opinion, the book of Enoch, is just as important as the book of Revelation. And the book of Enoch ties in exactly with the rest of God's Word. So for those people who have said, you know, the book of Enoch, it's not canonical. First of all, you probably don't even know what canonical means. It means it's not part of the original canon. Based on whose opinion? Based on those so-called church leaders who decided to leave it out. I believe that was never God's intent. In fact, the information that you'll find in the book of Enoch, you won't find in other parts of the scripture in detail. In detail. You'll find similar information on the book of Enoch in the rest of the scriptures, but not in the detail that the book of Enoch is written in. So I want to get into a few things about what's in this book. And I've already covered a lot of other things in previous videos, but I love the book of Enoch because of the detail, the information it gives us, and probably why the devil, probably why Lucifer, Satan, didn't want any more this book getting out than anything else is because it gives such great detail about the fallen angels. Why, what, when, what exactly they showed men and women. A lot of the evil that we see going on today was because of what the angels, the fallen angels, showed to the men and women of the past. Let's get into the book of Enoch. I'm going to kind of start at the end of what I want to share with you today, and then we'll get into the rest of it. Chapter 11 of the book of Enoch says, "And in those days I will open the store chambers of blessing which are in the heaven, so as to send them down upon the earth over the work and labor of the children of men. And truth and peace shall be associated together throughout all the days of the world and throughout all the generations of men." Now, here God is telling Enoch that the blessings are going to be just released completely. This will be during the time after, I believe, after the millennial reign and after men are on earth for eternity. Did you realize that men and women and children and families are going to be on the earth for eternity after the millennial reign? That's right. Chapter 12. Before these things, speaking about before the things that Enoch had written about in chapters 1 through 10, which I've gone over in other videos, so I won't do that now. But chapter 11 is very revealing. Before these things, Enoch was hidden, and no one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he lived, where he abode, and what had become of him. And his activities had to do with the watchers, and his days were with the holy ones. Now the angels were called the watchers, and Enoch literally lived where the angels lived. Now whether he was translated just like Elijah was, or how God did it, really doesn't matter. God's able to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. So anything we don't understand doesn't change the fact that God can do it. Verse 3, "And I, Enoch, was blessing the Lord of majesty and the King of the ages, and lo," or all of a sudden, "the watchers called me, Enoch the scribe, Enoch, you scribe of righteousness, go declare to the watchers of the heaven who have left the high heaven, the holy eternal place, and have defiled themselves with women, and have done as the children of earth do, and have taken unto themselves wives." Now this is God telling Enoch to go talk to these angels. Go talk to the watchers, they're called. And this is what God has to say to them. You have wrought great destruction on the earth, and you will have no peace, nor forgiveness of sin. And inasmuch as they delight themselves in their children, the murder of their beloved ones they will see. And over the destruction of their children they will lament, and they'll make supplication even unto eternity. But mercy and peace you shall not attain. So God is telling Enoch that even though these angels, these watchers who came down and cohabitated with women, and yes, they had sex with earthly women, and that's how they had the offspring of the Nephilim, the giants. Now, I know there are so many pastors and teachers who won't acknowledge that. But that's not only in the book of Enoch, it's also in Genesis. So if you want to call Enoch a liar, you'll have to call Moses a liar as well. And neither one of them are. Genesis 6:2 says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. What about Jude? What does it say in Jude? And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. So if you have any doubt that the book of Enoch is legitimate, read the rest of the Bible that has the stamp of approval by everybody. Chapter 13, and Enoch went and said, Azazel, you will have no peace. A severe sentence is gone forth against you to put you in bonds. Now, Azazel was the main leader of the angels who led this rebellion from heaven to come down to earth to mate and take wives of earthly women. And you shall not have toleration nor request granted to you, because of the unrighteousness which you have taught, and because of all the works of godlessness and unrighteousness and sin which you have shown to men. Azazel and the other angels that followed him showed men and women all sorts of evil. I talked about that in other videos in the past. Chapter 6 of the book of Enoch describes exactly who they are, literally lists the names of these fallen angels that followed him, and Simjaza, the other fallen angel. There were about 200 of them in total. So not all of the fallen angels came down and did what they did. That means that Satan and many of the other fallen angels, they're still in the upper heavenlies. When I say upper heavenlies, I mean above earth, but not in the heaven where God is. They're not there. And eventually they'll be cast down to earth. Verse 3, then I went and spoke to them all together, and they were all afraid, and fear and trembling seized them. This probably isn't strong enough. Fear and trembling seized them. They were terrified. They were absolutely terrified because of what God had said through Enoch. It's interesting here that here's Enoch. He's not an angel. And he is the one chosen by God to tell them what their sentence will be, what their punishment will be. And they besought me to draw up a petition for them, that they might find forgiveness, and to read their petition in the presence of the Lord of heaven. For from thenceforward they could not speak with him, nor lift up their eyes to heaven for shame of their sins, which they had been condemned. For from thenceforward they could not speak with him, nor lift up their eyes to heaven for shame of their sins, for which they had been condemned. Then I wrote out their petition and the prayer in regard to their spirits and their deeds individually, and in regard to their requests, that they should have forgiveness and length. So in other words, they're writing a petition up through Enoch. They want Enoch to write this thing up and present before God so that they can be forgiven, get back in right standing with God, They still wanted to live for eternity, and they didn't want the punishment. So they get Enoch to go write this petition up for them and present it before God. Verse 6, then I wrote out their petition and the prayer in regard to their spirits and their deeds individually, and in regard to their requests that they should have forgiveness and length. And I went off and sat at the waters of Dan, in the land of Dan, to the south of the west of Hermon. I read their petition till I fell asleep, and behold, a dream came to me, and visions fell down upon me. And I saw visions of chastisement, and a voice came bidding me to tell it to the sons of heaven, and reprimand them. And when I awaked, I came to them, and they were all sitting gathered together, weeping in Abeljail, which is between Lebanon and Seneser, with their faces covered. And I recounted before them all the visions which I had seen in sleep, and I began to speak the words of righteousness, and to reprimand the heavenly watchers. So God has shown Enoch all of these things that he's going to communicate. He's going to tell these angels. Chapter 14. The book of the words of righteousness and of the reprimand of the eternal watchers, in accordance with the command of the Holy Great One in that vision. I saw in my sleep what I will now say with the tongue of flesh and with the breath of my mouth, which the Great One has given to men to converse therewith and understand with the heart. As he has created and given to man the power of understanding the word of wisdom, so has he created me also, and given me the power of reprimanding the watchers, the children of heaven. Does this sound strange? Well, then go to 1 Corinthians and see what the Apostle Paul wrote. Know ye not that you will judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life? Verse 4. I wrote out your petition, and in my vision it appeared thus, that your petition will not be granted unto you throughout all the days of eternity, and that judgment has been finally passed upon you. Yes, your petition will not be granted unto you. And from henceforth you will not ascend into heaven unto all eternity. And in bonds of the earth the decree has gone forth to bind you for all the days of the world. Uh-oh. The judgment has come from God on these fallen angels. Look what it says in 2 Peter. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment. There it is. If you need a confirmation on the legitimacy of the book of Enoch, all the apostles, all the prophets, they all confirm the book of Enoch. Verse 6, and that previously you shall have seen the destruction of your beloved sons, and you shall have no pleasure in them, but they shall fall before you by the sword. And your petition on their behalf shall not be granted, nor yet your own, even though you weep and pray and speak all the words contained in the writing which I have written. The message to the fallen angels here: no forgiveness, ever, for eternity. This is the same message to those who reject the Son of the living God, Jesus Christ. There will be no forgiveness after we die. After we're out of these bodies, after our spirits and our souls leave these bodies, there's no more chance. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, just like Jesus said. But there's no more opportunity for eternal salvation. Verse 8, and the vision was shown to me thus. Behold, in the vision, clouds invited me, and mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightning sped and hastened me, and the winds in the vision caused me to fly, and lifted me upward, and bore me into heaven. And I went in till I drew near to a wall which is built of crystals, and surrounded by tongues of fire. And it began to frighten me, and I went into the tongues of fire, and I drew near to a large house which was built of crystals. And the walls of the house were like a tessellated floor made of crystals, and its groundwork was of crystal. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings, and between them were fiery cherubim, and their heaven was clear as water. The flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. He mentions portals. You see portals in the Old Testament, where angels seem to come and go from heaven. Portals. The American Indians talk about portals. Verse 13, and I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice. There were no delights of life there. Fear covered me, and trembling got hold of me. And as I quaked and trembled, I fell on my face, and behold, a vision. And lo, there was a second house, greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me. And it was built of flames of fire, and in every respect it so excelled in splendor and magnificence and extent that I can't describe to you its splendor and its extent. It sounds like what the Apostle Paul was talking about in 2 Corinthians. Verse 17, and its floor was of fire, and above it were lightnings in the path of the stars, and its ceiling also was flaming fire. And I looked and saw therein a lofty throne. Now, take a look at Revelation chapter 4, verse 2. It sounds exactly like what Enoch is describing here. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. And there was the vision of the cherubim. And from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, so that I could not look on it. And the great glory sat thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. Sounds like Matthew chapter 17, verse 2. And was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. Verse 21, none of the angels could enter and could behold his face by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. See, Enoch was just like Moses in the sense that he could not even look at the face of God. Remember how God hid Moses in the cleft of the rock as he passed by, and he could only see God's backside. The flaming fire was round about him, and a great fire stood before him, and none around him could draw near him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and yet he needed no counselor. And the most holy ones who were near him did not leave by night or depart from him. And until then, I had been prostrate on my face, trembling. And the Lord called me with his own mouth and said to me, come here, Enoch, and hear my word. And one of the holy ones came to me and waked me, and he made me rise up and approach the door, and I bowed my face downwards. This shows you just how personal God is with men. With those whom God loves and those who love him, he's very personal. So what did we get out of these few chapters in the book of Enoch? We find that the fallen angels that came to earth, which left their first estate, and their first estate was the holy of holy heaven. You see, the heaven that we think of as heaven is simply between earth and the heaven. The Bible makes it very clear that God's footstool is the heaven that we think of as heaven. But there's a heaven above the dome, and that is where God resides. That's the holy heaven. Let's go back and take a look at chapter 12 real quick, because this points out what I'm trying to tell you. The children of the angels were going to be destroyed. And in verse 4, it says, Enoch, you scribe of righteousness, go declare to the watchers of the heaven who have left the high heaven. They've left the high heaven. That's where God resides. The heaven below the high heaven is what we call the heavens, where we see the stars and the moon and the sun. That's called the high heaven, where God resides. But the heaven that we're talking about is the heaven that's above earth, within the dome. And yes, the earth is flat. I won't even get into that with people that are just so locked in with their cognitive dissonance that it's impossible for them to get outside of believing or seeing anything that NASA has given you. NASA creates all of the weather maps. They create all of the weather things you see on TV. Even your local weather guy, he's got a globe that goes across this round earth. See, they have to keep perpetuating that. Why couldn't they just show it to us flat? They could. Why won't they? Because they have to keep presenting and propagating the lie. If you don't have a copy of the Book of Enoch, you can get it online. I've actually put a link down in the description box below in almost all the videos where you can go online, you can read the Book of Enoch for free. It doesn't cost you anything. And I recommend you do. If you want to get your own copy, this is what I use, Ronald K. Brown. I like it. I really like it. And it's pretty marked up. So I just want to say, don't just believe what everybody tells you. Stop listening to people that say the Book of Enoch has no relevancy. It was the first prophetic book ever written, the Book of Enoch, before Moses ever came on the scene. Thanks for joining me for this study in the Book of Enoch. I hope you enjoyed it. Think about it. Hi, Steve here. I just want to say a very huge thank you so much to all of you who support Think About It. For most people on YouTube, they make a little bit of money from ads that are shown on their channel, but on my channel, YouTube automatically demonetizes my videos because of the content. From my experience, it appears as though they also shadow ban me, which means the videos don't get shown or listed as much as other videos. Is it really the type of content that should be demonetized, or is it just content they don't like? It's content that doesn't fit the New World Order, one world government agenda, and it never will, because I'm exposing their plans and sharing the truth with everyone that wants to hear it. That not only makes me unpopular on YouTube, but it also requires the support and prayers of everyone who realize how important this message is. If you're one of my supporters, I want to tell you that I appreciate you more than you may ever know. I consider you a co-worker with me in this effort and work to get the truth out to as many people as we can. Your support is a true blessing, and I appreciate you for it so much. If you're not able to support Think About It, I understand. Don't worry about it. The one thing you can do to help me, though, is to pass the links on to your friends and family and anywhere you think you can post the links to the videos. I just want you to know that if you're a supporter or a subscriber, whatever your relationship to Think About It is, I appreciate you and I thank God for you, and I pray that He will bless you and your family in every way. Thanks so much.